A big week for Australia in terms of foreign affairs. We'll have the Trade Minister Don Farrell on the program and Shadow Foreign Minister Mickaya Cash. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese split two parliamentary sitting weeks with his strongest statement yet on the situation in Gaza. In it, he said that, quote, Israel's denial of aid and the killing of civilians, including children seeking access to water and food, cannot be defended or ignored. We call on Israel to comply immediately with its obligations under international law and, quote, any proposals for the permanent forced displacement of the Palestinian population must be abandoned. There were comments in there too about the terror and brutality of Hamas, but the statement did appear a shift in the position of the government, particularly after the circumspect nature of these comments by Foreign Minister Penny Wong on Politics Now on Sky News with me on Tuesday. Who is to blame for no ceasefire in Gaza? Is it Hamas, the Netanyahu government, or both?
Look, Hamas has to release hostages. We've made that clear, and you know we have been unequivocal as an Australian government in our condemnation of Hamas. But I think this is a point where we need to, as an international community, back in what President Trump has said, which is that he wants a ceasefire and the release of hostages.
What do you think's going on there in terms of civilians, in terms of them getting enough food, and not getting enough food, should I say? What's your read on what's playing out there?
I think it's self-evident that insufficient aid is going into Gaza. I don't think anybody disputes that.
And who's responsible for that?
Yeah, we just want aid to go in.
So I won't say who's responsible. 3 days later, the PM put out his statement. He's had enough of images coming out of Gaza, as I understand it, has discussed this situation previously with the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and believes most countries other than the US and Israel have the same view on this. He thought the appropriate time to release the statement was on a non-sitting day, that being Friday. Now, even though the PM will attend the UN General Assembly in September, it's not presently, as I understand it, Australia's intention to support French President Emmanuel Macron on recognising a Palestinian state, despite weekend speculation to the contrary. But whether that position might change might depend on what happens in Gaza over the next month. And we've seen the Israeli government over the weekend look to implement some airdrops of aid. Also on the foreign policy front, we had a meeting between UK defence and foreign ministers with their Australian counterparts and the PM, at which we saw an AUKUS deal for 50 years committed to. This without the other partner in that arrangement, the US. It's as if it's to put pressure on the US. I'm not sure that will work. Then there was the Australian decision to allow in US beef imports in the country for the first time. The opposition smells a rat here and thinks it's part of an upcoming deal on tariffs with the US and questions whether it puts at risk Australia's biological security. More on this with Trade Minister Don Farrell in a moment. US President Donald Trump has welcomed the deal but seemed to say the US didn't do a deal with Australia on this.
Australia was great. They opened up beef yesterday for the first time ever. And they did it we didn't know about. We asked them to do it and all of a sudden we got a word that they wanted, so obviously they're looking to do something.
Well, former Nationals leaders and now backbenchers Barnaby Joyce and Michael McCormack caused a bit of a stir this week, demanding that the coalition abandon its previous position of a target of net zero emissions by 2050.
The head of the serpent on this is net zero. It's trying to attain this crazy idea that Australia by itself, because remember, China's not doing this, India's not doing it. So what's the point of us doing this if the rest of the majority of the world, majority of the economies of the world are not doing it?
You're going to vote and support Barnaby Joyce's repeal net zero bill?
I am. Well, there's a bit of a feeling in the coalition that Barnaby and McCormack, having been dumped from the front bench and knowing they're not going to be Nationals leaders again, are after a bit of glory and time in the sun at the tail end of their careers, when the coalition is odds on to dump net zero as a policy anyway. One national source suggested to me yesterday that the coalition was going through a process which would lead to the dumping of the net zero policy. But that process may take some time and had been held up partly because the Nationals wanted to commission research into the economic cost of dumping net zero and had a whole series of refusals from Australian firms who didn't want to undertake that modelling work. It's been revealed in the Sunday Telegraph this morning that Google has written to Communications Minister Annika Wells to take legal action against the government, perhaps even in the High Court, should it include YouTube in its social media ban for under 16s. And we've got many new Labor members of the House of Representatives in the Senate after the thumping landslide Anthony Albanese won on May 3rd. And while in question time at least, the leaders of the government, including the Prime Minister and senior cabinet ministers, were keen last week not to display any hubris at their victory,